Right guys, welcome to this exam practice video on the humanistic approach. For anyone sitting the 2022 exam series, this is an in-focus topic. I've got 4 exam questions for you today, 2 shorter answer questions and then 2 essays. One of those is a standard 16 marker and the other one is an application essay. You can see the order that I'm going to be covering things here, and the links to the specific questions are in the description below, so you can jump to different questions if you want. I'll put the questions on the screen before I reveal the answer, so if you want to pause it and give it a go, then please go ahead and do that. Before I jump in, if you find this video useful, I'd really appreciate it if you let me know by giving it a like. So as a quick reminder, the humanistic approach is an A-level only topic, and as such there is a lot of content to cover. You've got concepts like free will, the hierarchy of needs, congruence, unconditional positive regard, and the rejection of scientific methods. Remember, just like with other topics that are content heavy, you don't need to squeeze every drop of content into every question. Pick and choose what you're going to talk about in order to get the breadth-depth trade-off that the examiner's looking for. If you're starting to think that you may need a quick reminder of the humanistic approach, you can click on the link at the top of the screen now to do that. So, let's have a look at our first question. So, this is question 1 and it is a 4 marker. It's 2 marks of AO1, which is the part where you explain what congruence is, and then it's 2 marks for AO2, where you need to explain how Dominic may achieve it. Remember, it says one way in the question. It's not a trick question, and if you give 2 ways in the real thing, the examiner will most likely read the first one and disregard the second, even if the second one is better. Okay, so just be aware of that. So I would write something like this. You can see I've started with my AO1, which is in green, where I've said what congruence is, and then I've gone on to say how Dominic can achieve it. Just be aware, I've given you 2 ways that he can achieve congruence. Both of them are in purple. Obviously, in the real thing, just choose one, because like I said before, the examiner's only going to read one. You can see that I've said what needs to happen. It's in blue. Dominic needs to close the gap. I've then said how it can happen. Those are the 2 bits in purple, of which, again, you need to choose one. And then I've given a specific strategy, which is in yellow, that can be used by the counsellor, which will just bring a little bit more application to my answer. So, moving on to question 2. It's a 4-mark AO3 question. AO3 not because it's evaluation, but rather because you're being asked to analyse something. Now, it's an old spec question from back in 2013, but it's still very relevant, and there's no reason why you couldn't be asked something similar in a new spec paper. It's also a bit tricky because it requires you to draw on knowledge from different topics. You've got features of science covered in research methods, and the link to that is now at the top of the screen in case you need a quick recap. You also have some issues and debates because you may want to refer to things like determinism and reductionism in your answer. And then obviously you've got the knowledge of the humanistic approach that you need to draw on as well. So this is what I would do. I would talk about free will and holism within the humanistic approach because the scientific method is based around the exact opposite concepts, determinism and reductionism. So I've started with reductionism and the idea that in science variables have to be broken down in order to be studied. I've then moved on to the idea of free will, which is not compatible with science, because scientific methods place an emphasis on causal explanations, which effectively means that all events have a cause, which can be explained in universal laws, which is simply a description of hard determinism. Both determinism and reductionism are part of the scientific method, and therefore they are not in line with the humanistic approach. Okay? So you have to draw on your knowledge of issues and debates in terms of determinism and reductionism. You have to draw on your knowledge of what makes a science, and like I said before, you also have to draw on your knowledge of what the humanistic approach actually is. Okay, so there's a lot at play there. It's a nice question, but it's also a tricky question. Okay, so like I said, there's no reason why something like this couldn't come up in a new spec exam. So let's move on to our first essay. It is a bog standard outline and evaluate the humanistic approach essay. Here's my plan. As you can see, I'm going to attempt to give all the elements a mention, but I won't be giving them an equal mention because there's no way I'm going to be able to do that if I want to keep my outline concise. I have 3 evaluation points and 1 counterpoint, so that gives me plenty of punch to get a level 4 essay. Keep in mind here as well, please, that in the past, examiners have commented on the fact that people often don't understand the difference between the work of Rogers and the work of Maslow, and that is a bit of a shame. So if you can highlight that in your essay, that Rogers did one thing and Maslow did another thing, then that is definitely going to get noticed by examiners. And in a second, when I put my own essay up there, you'll see how I've done it. So here's the essay. The outline is slightly longer than some of my other outlines, but keep in mind that the humanistic approach is an A-level topic, and so there's going to be slightly more to say than in some of the Year 1 topics. Also, have a look at what I was saying earlier. In the outline, you can see that I have separated Maslow and Rogers into 2 separate paragraphs, and I've done that to emphasize the fact that they didn't do the same thing, but that they actually contributed different things to the approach. You've then got your 3 evaluation points and a counterpoint, with the counterpoint being in orange. You can also see that I've used my issues and debates in there a little bit as well, because we have a culture bias point at the end, and there is also a mention of some reductionism in the counterpoint as well. Okay, and finally here is the second essay, the application essay. This one came from a 2017 paper, and that is the last time the humanistic approach made an appearance as an essay. There's a lot to work with in the scenario, and there's also a couple of different ways that you can approach this essay. The one thing that I would say is that, as with any essay in the real thing, take the time to make a plan, and know that you're probably going to be thinking that you haven't got the time to make the plan because the clock's ticking, but take 1 minute or so just to gather your thoughts and just to work out what it is that you're going to write. The marks that you will gain from doing something like that will far outweigh any time that you lose by making a plan. So this is my plan. As you can see, the outline and evaluation sections of the essay are largely the same as the last essay, except I've cut 1 evaluation point. In this case, I've cut the culture bias evaluation point. We've also got the application section in green, and I've just popped down some notes on how the scenario links to the humanistic approach. So you've got Tatiana's deficiency needs are not necessarily all being met. That is evidenced by the fact that she needs her phone to feel safe, for example. We also have the idea that she may be in a state of incongruence, with her perceived self being anxious, but her ideal self being happy and sociable. You've also got the low self-esteem issue, and you could attribute that to the hierarchy of needs if you want, or you could attribute that to incongruence. It really depends on how you want to play it. There's no right or wrong way for that particular thing. You just need to make sure that you're justifying your answer whichever way you choose to go. So I've done it like this, nice and simple, outline, application, and then my 3 evaluation points. Now, back in 2017, the examiners commented on how a small percentage of students were able to weave the outline and the application together with the evaluation, and about how some students were able to draw on other approaches and use their application to form discussions and all of this stuff. All of that is fine, and if you're a confident essay writer, then please go ahead and use the information in this video to flesh out your own style of writing. I've kept my essay simple, simply because there is less that can go wrong that way. There is no right or wrong way to structure your essay. At the end of the day, if the content and the structure is there, you'll get the marks. So do what's right for you and do what you feel confident with, because that is the easiest way to write a good essay that is going to get you a nice amount of marks in the real thing. And that brings us to the end of the video. I hope it's been useful and I hope it's all made sense. The humanistic approach can be a little bit tricky to write about because there's a lot of content, but if you have a good working knowledge of the concepts and practice writing it a couple of times, you'll soon work out how you want to structure it. And obviously, the more times you practice writing it, the easier it'll become. So, any questions, please stick them in the comment section below and I'll do my best to get back to you ASAP. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.